Willkommen zur letzten Veranstaltung auf dieser Bühne. Es geht um Formatentwicklung. Jeder von Ihnen hat wahrscheinlich schon mal vor dem Fernseher gesessen und gedacht, ein Wort mit X, das war wohl nix. Oder wer hat diesen Schrott denn produziert? Denn Formate zu entwickeln, das ist Kunst und Wissenschaft zugleich. Diejenigen, die jetzt auf die Bühne kommen, wissen das nur zu genau. Sie wissen natürlich, wie es funktioniert, haben aber sicherlich auch schon einen Flop produziert, von dem Sie uns auch erzählen wollen. Christoph kennt Sie auch sehr gut, denn er ist Anwalt und berät die Autoren und Filmemacher und Produzenten bei der Formatentwicklung. Kommen Sie auf die Bühne und Sie stellen jetzt die Leute mit, die Sie mitgebracht haben.
Willkommen, so welcome. I switched to English because we have English-speaking guests from all around the world. Engineering entertainment, that's what it is about. And when you are at conferences, you always hear the phrase, television is dead. But guess what? People are still watching television. And guess what? There are people actually creating television entertainment. And two great minds who think about how to create television entertainment are here today to tell you more about the art and science of format development. To begin with, Omri Marcus, coming from a tiny little place called Israel with only 4 million viewers, how I found out today, nevertheless made it to the global market. He's a development partner at Red Arrow International. He runs his own blog, O Marcus TV, where he collects weird shows from all around the world. And he is the head of creative at Electric Sheep. So welcome, Omri, and not to forget, he's the first ever scholarship winner of the Entertainment Masterclass. So welcome, Omri. And in dialogue with Omri will be Duncan Gray, looking back, I would not say at the early beginnings of television, but when I read his bio earlier, I just found out that he even was at Planet 24, at the early glimmerings of inventing reality television with a format called Survivor. From that, he actually had a career all across both sides of the Atlantic, not only in England, in America, being a producer at Granada, running Granada Television, being at ITV as a commissioner at ABC in the United States, now the head of creative at Princess in the UK. So welcome, Duncan. And to give you an idea how they have experienced television, we thought it would be nice if they would bring along some moments that somehow stuck in their memory where they got excited about television at all. So welcome, Omri and Duncan.
Thank you, and good afternoon. We are very happy to see you all guys here. Okay, this is the one I picked, and I guess I should stand up to emphasize what is that thing. That happened in the early 90s, and I picked it because it represents what happened in television. What is the cost of a bad decision in the TV industry? There was a very important soccer game at one Saturday afternoon, and the channel broadcast that important soccer game. However, pretty much in the middle of the game, there was a news event, some kind of a terror attack on the other side of the country. The channel didn't know what to do, and they picked the worst possible solution. They split the screen. So if you wanted to see the soccer game, you had to watch on the right side, and if you wanted to get the news update, you need to look on the left side, which is a national trauma for all of us to see that. It's kind of like not making a decision if you want coffee or tea and decide to go on half coffee, half tea. So this was at 1993 or 1994, and it stayed as a national trauma. So I picked that as my favorite moment of television because this is kind of a good lesson about the power of this medium. I think we are talking about football, so I think it's now your time.
So I chose to share 3 moments, 2 of them from when I was growing up, and 1 of them from when I'd already been working in television for a little while, that I guess inspired me and led me to the career I was able to enjoy in television. I was 6 years old. It was 1974. I grew up in a town called Aberdeen on the northeast coast of Scotland. I had a Scottish father and I had a German mother. And it was the World Cup, and Germany reached the final of the 1974 World Cup, held here in Germany, and were due to play Holland. My mother had her uncle and aunt visiting, and my father decided we were all going to watch the World Cup together, and he decided he was going to invite some members of his family to watch the World Cup final. So there ended up my father, 3 or maybe 4 members of his family, and my mother and 2 members of her family, and me. And for some eccentric reason, the Scottish part decided they were going to support Holland at all costs. I don't know why, but they did. And it's the first time I remember sitting down with a group of people, my family, but a big group of people, and watching this box in the corner and having this incredible emotional reaction to what was happening. It was really important what happened. The result was really important, and it mattered to people in the room what really happened. Up until then, television had been, documentaries about animals or telling you what was happening in the world on the news. This was something that was live and unfolding in front of your eyes, and people were screaming at the television and willing one side to win and hoping another side would lose. And the most amazing thing about this final, I'm sure most of you know, is that it went against script to begin with. Before Germany even touched the ball, Johan Cruyff had been fouled in the penalty box, and Johan Neeskens scored this penalty. And at that moment, the living room that I lived in just went insane. And I always remembered that feeling, and as you know, the script returned to normal and Germany won, and there was a big celebration. But that moment was always very powerful, and I always thought, I didn't know, I was 6 at the time, but it stayed with me as I grew older, a desire to be part of moments like that. The next moment I chose might seem a strange thing, but it's a show called The Price is Right. I grew up in a hotel. It wasn't my father was a hotel manager, and we lived in an apartment block at the top of the hotel. So in the 70s, I was probably one of the few children that had a television in his bedroom. And my parents worked very late hours, and I was able to watch television whenever I wanted. And I found a funny thing. I found that the television that was on during the week at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, muscular cop dramas like The Sweeney and The Professionals and very, very audacious humor like Dave Allen was really exciting and dangerous. And then this odd thing happened on a Saturday night, traditional big family viewing time in the UK. The television got boring. It was vanilla, didn't make that thing that happened in your stomach. And it was all very carefully prepared, and people knew they were going to be on the television, and they all followed a script. And then in 1984, this show happened, and it was like an explosion of what might happen on television. For those of you who know, very quickly, the format is 300 people in a television studio. An announcer calls people out at random to come down and play on the floor. The moment of surprise you get is amazing. You play for high-end consumer goods, and the other thing is you don't have to have a specialist subject. It's really accessible. You just have to be able to have a good knowledge of what things cost. And that made a huge impression on me that the format had a story. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the concept was incredibly bold, which is put people who didn't know they were going to be in the television, surprise them, bring them down and get them to play a game, and they could go home with a brand new house full of consumer goods. And then the third moment, very quickly, is this, when I had been working in television for 8 years. And this is a video grab from the very first episode of Big Brother in the UK. I had been working in America in 1996 formatting Survivor, so we knew all about the idea of the game of life as a game show, that you could take a cast of... Survivor hadn't been on air yet, but we'd been working very hard on the idea that you took a cast of people and they played a game, but the game was the game of life and it was like a popularity contest and they might win a prize. But there was something odd about Survivor, and I suspect it had to do with the fact that it was all pre-recorded and it all happened in an unnatural atmosphere on an island. And Gary Carter, who's now my boss at Shine, took me into a booth and showed me the rushes of the first Dutch Big Brother in about 2000. And I remember looking at the magnitude of the UK set and thinking that was pretty much the perfect execution. It was so big that you had to build a house and you could only photograph the house from up above. And it was on for 100 days. And I probably think it hasn't been beaten in terms of a television format since its invention. So those were the first 3 moments that inspired me to work in television, really.
And then the question is, I mean, the last example is from 14.5 years ago, the first day of the Big Brother.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
What over the last year have you seen that you find refreshing? I mean, I guess we are talking about Gogglebox, but we are talking about why Gogglebox is so refreshing to you.
Yeah, I think probably it might be a good idea to play the clip, maybe.
Yeah, but just before we are showing the clip, how many of you have never heard about Gogglebox? Oh, well, I guess they've done quite a good job. Okay, so have a look.
Gross.
It's really clever.
What a load of old shit.
Adding it to pasta.
She's like you, love.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the same.
Absolutely.
You're better looking.
What planet is this on?
Is there little midgets in them Daleks?
What little numbers?
Work, bitch!
Oh, don't take your trousers down now.
What? Why would he do that?
Let's talk about what I want when it comes to the end.
You know what? When she goes, I'm going to be... Look, I'm crying already.
Oh, look. Oh, bless, and they got me going.
So, would you like to explain about the format for a second, for those that didn't understand it?
So at its simplest, it's a cast of people from all over Britain. They have a camera put in their television, and we watch them watching television. But we see the clips that they watch, and then we cut to them and watch their dialogue. And like all brilliant ideas, it's an old idea, it's just a new way of doing it. There's been television review shows on television for 40, 50 years, but instead of a middle-class professional in a suit telling you what to think, doing jokes that have been written for him or her by a production team, this just gets rid of all the artifice, gets rid of the middle people, and just shows you what people at home are saying to each other when they watch the television.
In a way, it's kind of translating the social media of the fact that you don't want to experience television by yourself, but it powers by the fact that you watch it with other people. And it kind of translated it quite well into the medium of television. I told you that Tim, the creator of that, is a friend of mine, and I remember the first time he told me about this idea, and it sounds so idiotic, and I was thinking, oh, great, you can make a spin-off and put an internet show where we will watch people watching Gogglebox on the TV set, or even to have another web show where we're watching people watching Gogglebox. Yeah, he didn't find it funny, but since he had the last laugh, since it's so successful now in the UK. I also like the fact that there is a factor in television, just like in the sitcom Friends, the fact that you are getting into your living room a group of very colorful people that are not asking for coffee. You can shut them down whenever you feel like. They are the perfect friends, the perfect companion. And Gogglebox really fine-tuned that essence of TV show.
Yeah, it's a show that started life on a Wednesday night at 10:30 in a very dead time slot. And very quickly, within 2 or 3 episodes, you could feel a ripple throughout the country of people going, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? And it's now been moved to the very prestigious 9 o'clock slot on a Friday night on Channel 4. And that's where historically Friends played. That's where all the big entertainment shows played. And interestingly, this is made by a factual company, Studio Lambert, and it was also commissioned by a factual commissioner. And I think what's interesting is that big entertainment shows are in a little bit of a hiatus at the moment. There are not many new brands coming through because I think the market's a bit stagnated. And a little bit like when Big Brother started, which was sort of commissioned by a factual commission in the United Kingdom. The factual method of telling stories is becoming more and more important in format creation, rather than putting on an entertainment.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see, talking about the format industry, the way that this show was in the US a few months ago, was premiered in Bravo, and I think it was even commissioned for a second series, and it's now going to be in Israel. They also sold the format to Israel. Any other people from other territories that knows that it's going to be in their territory? I wonder if they're going to make a German version of that. Yeah.
I know it's going to happen in Finland and Sweden and Norway. So, and we all do it. We all watch television. We all share it. We all talk about it. And what's so clever about this show is it's funny, but it's also very moving. And it can be at its most moving when they simply show a news story about something sad, and watching the country react to that and emote with that is very moving and poignant. And then the next moment, they can be laughing and crying and making a criticism of Simon Cowell or whatever. And it really runs the entire emotional spectrum.
Yeah. They've done the last show of Ant and Dec. They've done something that I found brilliant. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Ant and Dec, but it's a big variety show. You have no idea what's about to happen there. And the last show they've done, in the last show of the series, they went into one of their audience member and they said, I think her name was Emily, and a 60-year-old lady. And they told her, listen, Emily, you've watched all of our episodes this season, and we wanted to say thank you. We are really appreciative of that. But what you don't know is that we watched you watching our show as well. And then they surprised her with showing clips of her watching the entire series of Ant and Dec show. And they actually done a kind of a game show of what did you say when that thing happened on our show. So it's kind of very new kind of relationship between the TV program and the audience. Even if it's not happening to you, you still like to imagine yourself, oh, what would I say? Or what would I have been doing instead of her? And the next thing that we are about to see, and we are going to see it in a second, it's if there are any Americans in the audience right now, please don't look on the next slide because the FCC is not allowing that. Can you show the next slide? That's Nipplegate. I guess everybody knows it. Is there anyone that is not familiar with that picture? We are celebrating in 2 months from now, 10 years anniversary for that scandal to happen. I'll give you a short, the Super Bowl game. Justin Timberlake?
Yeah, Justin Timberlake.
In the last minute of the show, they are saying accidentally. Some would argue that women that are going with a star on their nipple, it's not really accidentally. It took off part of her shirt, and the entire nation watched Janet Jackson tits. And now that thing is a moment in TV history because of two very interesting reasons. The first one is that TiVo, the company TiVo, was measuring the viewing for segments. And they were able to say that this moment was the most watched second on that entire event, the Super Bowl. And kind of, you could understand that people made rewind it and they discussed it, and it was clear that this is the story here. And the second thing, it was the early days of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, so people actually didn't just talk about it in their living room, but also shared it and uploaded it to YouTube. And that was kind of created a scene out of the fact that they kind of generated a TV moment in a much bigger scale than ever before. Ever since, we can think about the Susan Boyle moment, and this is kind of the one step in the evolution before that. So happy anniversary for all of us for the nipple of Janet Jackson. But I wanted to ask you about the connection between, how do you think that TV changed because of the social media?
Well, I think what's interesting about social media is, for me as a television professional, it's not the only interesting thing about social media, is that the thing is the amount of traffic about television, is that just like Gogglebox, people like talking about television. And we're sort of in a moment in the industry, and it happens once every 10 or 12 years, where people go, television's about to die. It's dying. There's a new kid on the block. And about 15 years ago, it was video rental outlets like Blockbuster. And the television industry was going through a really difficult time because it wasn't putting things on that people wanted to watch. So they would get out of their houses and they would walk down the street and they'd go to Blockbuster and they'd rent a video instead. And people went, oh, viewing figures are declining, television's dead. And what television did was it responded with a series of incredibly high concept shows in my genre, Millionaire, Pop Idol, Big Brother. In other genres, drama got its act together, led by premium cable in America, Sopranos, The Wire. Network television had to follow with shows like Lost, Desperate Housewives. And television became preeminent again. And I think we're in a similar situation at the moment, which is people have choices. And I've been really, you and I were talking about this earlier, I think I've been quite impressed with the way that television, the platform side of the television business has responded to the digital challenge. Some territories have been a bit slow, some territories have made bad business decisions, but by and large, television's got its act together. All the big broadcasters have catch-up services, all the big broadcasters have got together and sort of shared their content for catch-up services. They're not fighting each other. So you've got quite progressive platform people over here, but then the programmers over here are in the other direction. They're behaving very conservatively, and they seem to be operating under the assumption, it's quite simplistic, but I think it's a fair thing to say, that they think that everybody under the age of 40 has stopped watching television, and they only do this on a laptop or a phone, and they only want to interact with their laptop and the phone. And it seems to me that they're operating under the assumption that when you hit 40, you put your laptop and your phone down and you start watching television. And when you're under 40, you like exciting things, and when you're over 40, you like boring things. So they put boring programs on for old people. And so we're in one of those moments at the moment, and the problem is for television is that actually there's a real alternative now, which is you can pick up your tablet or your computer or your telephone and you can get world-class content delivered to it. And largely it's television that's been made for another market 5 or 10 years ago. But I think television needs to respond to that now because the consumer has a choice. And the consumer increasingly is moving away from boring content into interesting content, and we have a duty to be interesting. So I think social media, very long answer to the question, delivers an instant judgment, and it tells you whether people find what you're doing boring or interesting.
It's funny, the declaration of the death of television, that is something that I feel like, I have a hobby to collect newspaper articles that declare about the death of television. I think the cemeteries are loaded with people that declared on the death of television, but still television has a completely different logic to it. I mean, you don't hear everybody said that the iPhone and the iPad will kill the broadcast television. You don't hear people saying that iPad and iPhone will kill media convention because people are texting and during the conference and they can do pretty much what other stuff, but we need to be more interesting so people will text less. I see you, by the way. No, I'm joking. The fact that the social media is making this process much faster because the judgment has been done much more on the first episode, on the first minute. The tweeting is been done about, it makes us work harder, which is, I feel like it's a great thing. I'll tell you another anecdote from the Israeli industry. The TV in Israel started in '67, which is quite late to join the game, and it was a public channel. And since the government ruled that thing, they mainly showed concert and ballet dancing. So Israel is the only place in the world where the establishment of the TV made the cinema industry make a lot of sales, a lot of tickets. So there was increasing the amount of people going to the cinema while they just established this TV show because they had nothing to see there. Yeah, it's weird, but I'm trying to emphasize the fact that TV has its own logic. Stuff are being happening there that we can't really understand only in retrospect. And now maybe it's about time to talk about what we gathered here for, about generating good ideas. And since you have such a long experience in that, I would like to hear your take about how to get the maximum out of that process.
I think people who work in television spend too long looking at television for inspiration. And I think it's important to watch television if you work in television because, yes, you need to understand the marketplace and you need to understand what's a new idea, what's already being done. But sort of in my experience, really breakthrough television ideas come from looking outside and what's happening in real life or what's happening in other sectors. And so a story about Gogglebox, for example. Omri, you introduced me to the phrase double ouch idea. Gogglebox is a double ouch idea. It's such a good idea that I find it quite difficult to watch. It's painful because I go, oh, that's really good. And as a competitive person, I wish I'd thought of it. But the other reason why it's a double ouch is it's been under our noses for 10 years. When I worked at ITV and started working at ITV in 2006, we developed a new way of researching television. We decided that people who went to qualitative research groups had become so sophisticated in telling you what they think they want you to hear that we no longer believed them. So we started putting cameras on people's televisions to watch them watching television. I can't tell you how many sessions I went watching people watch television. And I was such an idiot that I didn't understand that what was happening in front of my eyes was Gogglebox. And I think when I build development teams, I purposely find people who haven't worked in television.
Really?
I encourage them not to watch too much television, and I set them the challenge of taking a portable camera, nowadays an iPhone, but in the old days a portable video camera, and I ask them to go out and film something that's happening in the real world and come back and show us, rather than watch the television and go, oh, there's a game show on Channel 4, but if we did it a bit more like this, maybe we could do it on ITV. And I think the best example I can give you of that, and it's a slightly self-serving story, but it's about me, but actually it's about my boss, I got my first break in television developing The Big Breakfast, which was a breakout breakfast show on Channel 4 in the UK, and it ran for 10 years. And the secret of The Big Breakfast was it was a radio show on television. And I'd worked in radio for 9 months. I was 22. And my boss gave me a job, and I was the chimpanzee, and he gave me a typewriter. And he said, there's a tender for the breakfast process on Channel 4. Write a breakfast show. And I literally copied down, second for second, word for word, what the Radio 1 breakfast show was at the time. And that became The Big Breakfast. And that would have only happened if my boss, wouldn't have happened if my boss hadn't been brave enough to give somebody completely inexperienced, who'd never worked in television, a computer and a desk, and say, what would you do with a breakfast television show? And I think there's so many lessons of look outside, look what's happening in real life, particularly now where authenticity is everything. Very few people want artifice at the moment. We want real things. And when you try and make things up and pretend that things are real when they're not, nowadays the audience sort of find you out.
I think the bullshit rate these days is much more sensitive. But since you've been both on the commissioner side and on the production side, how can you evaluate if an idea is a good idea or a bad idea? Do you have this kind of gut feeling? Are you one of those annoying people that has a good gut feeling?
I think some people are driven by insight, some people are driven by instinct. Inevitably, there's always a big debate in creative organizations when you invest money. And some people want insight, they want research, they want, you know, track record, prove to me that this is going to work. And there are other people who are driven by gut. I'm a little bit more gut than insight. And I think you also learn from your failures and your mistakes. And I think you're probably, I don't know what you feel from when you've been. I think you're at your most vulnerable when you're at your most successful, and you're at your least creative when you're at your most successful. And I can think of disasters that I've been involved with as a producer, and they've as a commissioner, and they've come sort of a year into a period of success. And I love football, as you'll see from the slide. I support Manchester United. I go to Old Trafford a lot. And when I'm thinking about doing something new, I look round the football stadium. There's 72,000 people there. And I look at the person in that stand, and I look at the person in that stand, and I look at the person in that stand, and I try and think, are you going to watch this? I also do it on a Sunday morning. My kids play football. And I look round the pitch at all the parents, and I go, are you going to watch this? Are you going to watch this? And the times that I've made dreadful mistakes is when I haven't been going to Old Trafford. I've been so busy running around going, oh, look at me, I'm a success. I'm having dinner with this person, and I'm having dinner with that person. And I don't have time to go to Old Trafford. And I remember recommissioning Dame Edna at ITV. It was a stupid thing to do. I remember that Dame Edna had been a huge star when I was growing up, and I thought, oh, I can do anything I want. We're going to do Dame Edna. And I remember going to Old Trafford a week before the show was going to start and looking around Old Trafford and going, this is going to be a disaster. Not one person in this football ground is going to watch the television show. And I think always looking outside, television's a consumer-driven business, and too many people look inside to the industry. They don't look outside at the consumer. And I think it's got quite a lot to do with the fact my dad was a hotelier, and you know, if you had a bad steak, you never went back, and all of that stuff, and you were only as good as the last steak and chips you served, but you're only as good as the last television show you.
No, it is interesting that I mean, your parents were in the hotel industry, because it is kind of answering needs 360 degrees, 24/7 of people needs, and this is pretty much what we are doing. And we are trying to figure out what are their needs, what are their fantasies, and answer that question.
Well, what about you when you make mistakes? Presuming you have made mistakes.
I've never made a mistake. No, I'm joking. Every day I learn how little I understand in television, and it's kind of what keeps me going. But I think that my biggest failure was actually something of a success. Now, I have a doubt if I want to tell this story or not. I will try to tell this story, but blur the details. I was invited a couple of months ago to a brainstorm meeting. A certain channel, I won't say which, asked me for an idea for a game show. The channel is broadcasting for young male audience, which means teenagers till 20-something. And they asked me for an idea for a game show. And I came up with all my knowledge, and it's quite wide knowledge about the game shows all around the world, all throughout history. I came up with different games, different mechanics, different eye candies, everything I know about game shows for 4 hours, and all those commissioners were sitting there, no, it's not the direction, no, it's not. Now, at 2 o'clock, I had to go and pick up my son from the nursery, so I kind of became quite upset, quite nervous at 1:30, and I was kind of shouting at them, what do you want? Do you want a girl in bikini to play video games, and we need to guess what kind of video game they are playing? And the commissioner was like, Fast forward 2 weeks later, an entire season of topless girls playing computer games was on the air, very successful, and he called me to ask how much I'm charging for that and what kind of credit would I like. So I asked no credit, no connection of me to that project, and the money as well. I don't want anything of your money or your credit. So I think this is my biggest failure, and the lesson that I've learned from it is to find out someone else to pick up my son from the nursery, and not to say everything that comes to mind, but keep on my dignity at some point. It's not my dignity, it's the girl's dignity, but yeah, you get my point.
The other thing I've found is not testing an idea thoroughly. So this is a less entertaining story, but I think might lead us on to something to do with risk and what an odd industry television is. I commissioned a game show called Duel from French television, and I was too quick. I went into a room, and these very charming, seductive French people, Joel and Omri, I think their names were, we played a game head-to-head. You got 10 chips, I got 10 chips. And we were given a question, A, B, C, or D, and we were told, you can cover all the answers if you want. The only thing you have to do is be the last one with a chip. And I loved that because that was a new thing. I knew that there was this thing called spread betting that started happening where you didn't have to bet on the outcome of something. You could just bet on a statistical spread. So it seemed to be a thing that was happening in real life. So I went, yep, I know, we're going to do that. And we went too quickly, and actually it was really boring watching you and me bet. But then 18 months later, up popped £1 million drop, which was exactly the same idea, except it wasn't a two-headed game. It was a proper, it was a much more dramatic, narratively coherent version of that, which was one person with £1 million getting to spread bet on possibilities. So I think sometimes one of the things that happens is you hit on the fragment of a good idea and you get so excited that it's a new idea, you forget to say, okay, right, that's a new idea, but how can we embed it in a story that makes the story as powerful as possible? So this game show that we commissioned called Duel had the new idea, spread betting in, but the story was boring. So it's about finding this new thing and then embedding it in a framework that gives you the most powerful story possible. And then the price is right. The new thing was calling somebody out from the audience who didn't know they were going to be on television, have them come down, they weren't prepared, and then ask them to guess the value of consumer goods. And if you sort of said, hey, come on down and do something else, then it probably wouldn't have been as good. So there's a balance between a new idea but also telling stories, and television's all about telling stories, I think.
So the conclusion is never buy formats from French people.
Yeah.
And that vacuum cleaner is always a good drive for a drama.
Yeah.
The Price is Right is really interesting phenomena. It's been running for 40 years now?
Yes.
Even more, from the early 60s.
Yes.
So it's almost 50 years now. And yeah, and it's still having the same vacuum cleaners, making people making very crazy shenanigans in the studio. So, but what do you think is making The Price is Right so successful for such a long period of time in a world that keep on changing?
Well, I think lots of formats exist because of their first mover advantage and they have tradition and all of that. But it's a high concept, coherent story. And when Drew Carey brought it back and the new Price is Right for CBS, you just had amazing moments of people having a golf putt to win a £100,000 golf sports car. It's money can't buy prizes. It's accessible. It's not exclusive. I don't have to have a university degree to win. And, you know, there are moments like that penalty kick from the 1974 World Cup, done again and again and again. I don't think it's the most exciting show on the television anymore, but if I was a pension fund investor and I had to put some pension money in it, I'd put it in that and Family Feud, because I know they're going to run for another 40 years.
Yeah. I think that there is now kind of a correlation. People start to understand, commissioners start to understand that the time and our engagement is also something that it's very important for us. So if they are showing us some kind of content on the screen, we want it to worth our time and engagement. There is the screensaver kind of television, like the Kardashians or other shows that even if Kim Kardashian will go to the restroom for 5 minutes, she won't rewind to see what she missed, because it's kind of a screensaver. And the other one, the engagement kind of shows that are keeping you at your toes, is been fine-tuned to the level of you really want to see what's going to happen next. You really want to see if the vacuum cleaner costs $5 or $7. It's really, they really made quite good television with that. And I wonder what is the next step of that? I mean, I'm going to ask a question about the daytime TV, which is, I guess, something that people tend to ignore because of the small budget, but it is a very interesting area. Where do you think the daytime TV is heading now?
I think we're inevitably moving to a world where we're going to have to follow the American model. I think it's impossible to sustain a 24/7 broadcast culture. I think broadcasters are going to have to franchise out their airtime and concentrate just on prime time. What you call screensaver television won't do anymore. We have options. We can either get world-class content from content libraries online, or we can go off and do something more active, like go online and play a quiz with somebody, or go online and just do something else. So I think inevitably daytime will actually become a little bit more adventurous, because I think you're going to have to franchise out that airtime and try new things in it. And actually daytime has always been adventurous. When a lot of big primetime format ideas that happened in the years 2000, 2010 were little segments on daytime shows in America and the UK. So, for example, I was involved in Extreme Makeover Home Edition. I commissioned that show when I was at ABC. This goes against what I said about don't watch television. But we watched an awful lot of Oprah at the time, and Oprah was on every day, and her best rated show was when she went and made over somebody's house. And everybody went, oh, that's on daytime television. But we said, well, yeah, but the people who watch that watch television every day, so they'll probably watch that in the evening as well as watching it in the daytime. So it's actually daytime television, I think, is quite important, because you can test quite outlandish ideas in live magazine shows. Yeah. And if they don't work, don't do it the next day. And if it does work, do it again and again and again, and then take a version for it and put it into prime time. So I think daytime could be really important. Yeah, because it's mother or maternity leave, and pensioners and unemployed and people that lost the remote control. And then, but this is the core of that audience. But then in the evening, to get the numbers for the prime time, you need to just build on that thing to bring more to you make it more exciting. And I think the problem with television at the moment is in prime time, it's just catering for that audience. It's not taking enough risks. And so I think what's interesting about television, it's a creative business. We succeed or fail by engaging with early adopters. I think early adopters are incredibly important. and early adopters aren't people to be scared of. You know, early adopters are tastemakers, and if you can engage the early adopters, you will get a mainstream audience. And all the big hits have been driven by early adopters, and then they ripple out into the mainstream. And at the moment, television seems to be going the other way, and that's only wanting to engage with the outer circle, not the inner circle.
Yeah.
And it's going the wrong way round. You throw a stone in the water, and you let it ripple, rather than the other way around.
Just so I know, is there any TV commissioner in the audience? No, great, so we can trust those people. I have a feeling like most of the time, when I'm going to all the TV markets, and I'm hearing those TV commissioners asking for new ideas, but still they are buying the same old shitty ideas that they bought last year. And then they are and I don't blame them because they are as good as their last decision, and it's kind of moving out of fear. Some of them are brilliant group of people, and I must give a compliment to the UK commissioners that I had to deal with. Some of them are extremely brilliant, and some of the Americans one was also okay. But the rest of them are kind of buying into either the same shows that they bought a year before, or they're buying all kinds of trendy shows. Last month there was MIP, the TV market, and they had all kinds of brilliant shows like Dolphins with the Stars, where celebrities are diving with dolphins, if you didn't get it from the name. I asked the salespeople if we can change it in Israel for sharks with the stars, because this thing I would have watched. And the other thing is all the kind of the duplicates, like Rising Star was kind of argumental but successful show, this buzzed show from the last market. So this market, they had a shower where people are singing in the shower, and with an app you can decide what would be the temperature of the water. Now, in 6 months, the next MIP market, I'm 100% sure you won't see a trace of either of those shows, even though they sold a couple of options, but it will be a very blurred memory of all the people, and there will be another couple of idiotic ideas that will be there and depress all of us creative people.
But I think we've got to be really careful, because I've been on both sides of the fence, and I'm a producer now, so yes, all commissioners are rubbish. But television is the only industry where we creatives don't take a financial risk. You know, we turn up to a broadcaster and we go, oh, we can't stand you, but here's an idea, give us 100% of your, finance it 100%, leave us alone, just let us do it, please don't bother us. You know, and I think it's really interesting that I didn't speak quite well enough about Big Brother, but what I think is so interesting about Big Brother, this monolithic program, the most perfect execution of the game of life as a game show, done as a multi-platform event, done day in, day out. The only reason it got on air was that John de Mol was willing to deficit finance it with the broadcaster in Holland. You know, he put his money where his mouth was. And, you know, there comes a point where creatives like you and I have to be prepared to do that. We can't go to the broadcaster and go, oh, please give us all the money, take all the risk. We're not going to take any risk. So I'm just trying to have a balanced discussion about it. Yes, I do think in the non-fiction business, the market is very stagnant at the moment. I do think some of the ideas are ridiculous and won't last, and I don't understand the format bubble. I think drama's very vibrant and very healthy. And what I think is interesting about drama is that studios and producers have to deficit finance dramas by and large. So producers have to produce stuff that they actually believe in, rather than sort of do things that they think might work and they might get broadcasted. So I think the onus is on us just as much to truly believe in our ideas. And if we really believe in them that much, you know, I don't think the digital platform has evolved enough yet, and the question is, will it ever be evolved enough for us to deficit finance and go straight to market? But, you know, you look at examples in the music industry of Little Boots or Ed Sheeran or Justin Bieber, who went straight to market and got rid of the record company and then went to the record company. So somewhere along the line, as creators, we've got to figure that out. And, you know, I keep trying to persuade people who are very, 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 very famous on YouTube to come and do television shows, and they don't want to do them because they make lots of money on YouTube and they don't have a lousy television person telling them what to do. So I don't want this to be all commissioners are terrible. Yes, there are some terrible ideas being bought, but I think creatives also have to take some of the responsibility too.
And since we are getting to the end of this discussion, I want to end on a positive note. So after we talked about why you got into the industry, I'm curious to know what keeps you every day, what makes you tick.
Well, why do you like it? I mean, what's your biggest kick when you...
I think that I still feel like with everything, I know it's a digital conference here, but I still feel like TV is the best tool to make significant change in people's life, in society life. I will just give the cliché examples like the black president at 24 or the gay couple at Modern Family that made an amazing change in the society in a really short period of time. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Benidorm Bastards, which in the US was, and in the UK was called Off the Walkers, but it takes elderly people to pull pranks on young people, and it made significant change in the way elderly people consider themselves in society. They used to feel like they are a transparent group of the society, and suddenly they are on the prime time and they are in a control position. It made a significant change. So I'm getting up every morning in a feeling that I'm about to tell a story that will be, even if it's a game show or variety show or just an entertainment show, but a show that would be significant enough, that will be part of, because I'm getting into the most intimate places of people, their living room. And I wanted to leave a mark that the following day when they will go to the water cooler, or even if they are texting or they are writing on tweets or Facebook, I sound like my grandfather now, they are still, it's going to be significant for them and relevant for their life. And it's an endless chase, and I'm so happy and feel so much joy with that. I see it as a great opportunity that I got to deal with it.
And I agree. There's nothing better. You know, as creatives, we're all egotists. We all want people to see our work. And I always remember when the Big Breakfast started, I was 22. It started on Monday, the 22nd of September. And I stayed at home and watched it on Monday, the 22nd of September. And then went to work. And then the next morning, I went to work whilst the program was on, and I was on a tube train. And I heard two people say to each other, "Did you see that new program yesterday called The Big Breakfast?"
Yeah.
That's it. And the reason why I believe in television so much is you get into moments. I was very lucky with Britain's Got Talent. I commissioned that at ITV. The Saturday it started, 5 million people watched it. 8 days later, 17 million people watched the final. And when you get into that situation where you feel an entire nation start to react to the thing that you've been involved with, and it's purely narcissistic, by the way. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to save lives. It's not going to change a nation's economy. But as a creative, that's what you respond to. You know,
yeah.
Is having people enjoy what you do and talk about it and say that it's good.
Yeah.
And the medium that can do that most successfully, I still believe, is television.
Yeah. So let's wrap this panel before it won't be relevant any longer.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. If you have questions, email us or something. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I just have the question, what is coming next? You already said that everything have already been here. What is coming next? Next TV show?
I think we're in I think we're in a real problem at the moment. I couldn't tell you what's coming next. I can tell you a lot of things that I don't think are very good that are coming next, like the Dolphin Show and things like that. But have you heard anything that really genuinely excites you?
No, nothing that excites me, but I think like we are going to see more and more technology, drama that is based on technology, that the home audience is generating a drama in the studio. Rising Star, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg in generating live drama by using a good connection between the iPhone and the iPad and this entire app world into the reality series. I think there are going to be much more of those, and some of them are going to be in a different arena, but I have no idea, and if I had, I wouldn't tell that here.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience.